Would I still consider Aerodrome to be a sleeping giant? Now, even though nothing I say is financial advice, I don't see why not, because the way I take a look at it is that, first of all, for me to even consider a project to be a sleeping giant, I think first of all, the market cap does have to be pretty giant, which I think, Aero, which is Aerodrome's native token, I think it is pretty giant. I mean, it's around 800 million currently. It's by no means the biggest, but it's not the smallest either, right? It's pretty okay in size. I think it's pretty giant in the grand scheme of things. Now, why do I think it's sleeping? It's because even though we've seen a pretty decent recovery when it comes to Aero, I feel like it hasn't really had that next leg up yet. You know what I mean? So this is why I think it's kind of sleeping, and then it is pretty giant in market cap, which is why, again, I think it's a sleeping giant. Now, granted, it could be said with a lot of altcoins out there because some people may be thinking, okay, we haven't really seen that next leg up, and actually, not too long ago, we saw altcoins not do that good. I'm totally aware of that, but then, still, if there's that next leg up, if there's an altcoin season, Aerodrome is something that I do want to take a look at. I'm not telling them to do anything, but the way I view it is that when it comes to the fundamentals, it's pretty okay, I think. It's a decentralized exchange on the base network, and the base network is Coinbase's layer 2. So that brings a lot of, I think, more so attention had that, say, Aerodrome been in a different place. Maybe because of the sort of notoriety and sort of the intention of Coinbase's layer 2. If it didn't have that, it would be a different case. But then in this case, it is on the base network. So yeah, I think it does kind of give it, more attention, at least to me. However, when I take a look at the idea of $15 when it comes to Aero, market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply would be around 13 billion. That by no means, by the way, if it ever even were to happen, is going to not be, the best upside of all time. It's not, right? I mean, but my perspective is that I am not looking for like a 500x or something like that. That's not what I'm looking for. So I am not into microcaps to even begin with. And yeah, but at the same time, I'm not trying to look for something with a very massive market cap. Like personally for me, Uniswap, right, which is a decentralized exchange, and that is arguably the most popular one right now. And when I take a look at Uniswap, right, do I really want to get into its native token called Uni as of right now? Nah, not really. When I take a look at Aero, I just think it is, just a little bit more dynamic just because of the market cap. It is lower. I also take a look at when it comes to Aerodrome, I just think it's a little bit more kind of on the rise, whereas Uniswap, it's already kind of done its thing, When I take a look at why is being a decentralized exchange on the base network, I think, pretty interesting. Well, it's because, again, Coinbase is publicly listed. It's on the S&P 500. So if they have a layer 2 and there's a decentralized exchange on there, which I arguably think is the most popular one actually on, again, the base network in terms of a decentralized exchange, it's something that I do look at, even though I'm not telling anyone to do, what I'm doing, right? But then at the same time, when I take a look at, Aero, $15, again, market cap considering current circulating supply around 13 billion. We've seen Uni, right, again, which is Uniswap's native token, reach over $20 billion in market cap, and that was way back in 2021. Like, we're talking about years ago. Now, granted, there was less competition back then, but still, over 20 billion at that time. Imagine what maybe Uni could do if we saw an altcoin season during the cycle, and I think Uniswap, if anything, just became more popular ever since then. So, again, if Uni did way better than before, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. And again, around a $13 billion market cap, that's still like, over $7 billion less than Uni's market cap that it reached back in 2021 at least one point, right? And yeah, it's just not something I think too ridiculous of a market cap to me, but this is just my perspective. Now, had Aero needed a market cap of like 50 billion or something like that, like, come on, like even at that point, that is not an idea that I would entertain at all, actually, because like how? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see that in the next 5 months when it comes to Aero, but, maybe around market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply around 13 billion, maybe that doesn't seem too outlandish, but only time will tell. And what I like about Aerodrome as well is that it's kind of outgrown the popularity of something called Velodrome. And it's already kind of done that for quite a while, because why do I want to mention this? And now some people may be thinking, wow, Velodrome sounds so similar to Aerodrome. Well, there's kind of a story behind it, because when it comes to Aerodrome, it's actually a fork of Velodrome, right? But then the thing is, Aerodrome is just way more popular than something like Velodrome, which is kind of, interesting to see because it is, again, a fork of Velodrome. And I think there's a major reason why. Again, it's because of that base network aspect, right? Velodrome is on Optimism. It's an Ethereum layer 2, and it is a layer 2 much like the base network. But again, the base network is Coinbase's layer 2. So that kind of brings more sort of, again, I think, attention. Now, granted, though, the base network actually, funnily enough, is built in collaboration with Optimism. So a lot of my friends, sometimes when they see that, they're like, whoa, why would Optimism quite essentially make another competitor for themselves? Like, or should I say help make one, right? Which, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not part of their team or something like that. So who knows what, the mindset was behind that. But then, I just find it pretty interesting nonetheless. And I think, collaborating with Coinbase, it's a pretty good move, I think, because it maybe brings the name out there. And if I take a look at, the base network, right? Optimism has the kind of skills, I would say, of a layer 2 and kind of the experience, whereas something like Coinbase probably has, more capital to kind of do stuff like that. So it's a pretty good combination. And I think at the end of the day, anyways, Ethereum is such a massive layer 1 blockchain to the point that having other layer 2s, it doesn't really diminish it too much in terms of the competition of the other layer 2s just because Ethereum is so massive. Now, let me explain real quick what is a layer 2, right, in this case. It's basically allowing Ethereum to be enjoyed while at the same time not necessarily having to deal with some of the, common issues like the sky-high gas fees and arguable, again, scalability issues. So that's kind of one of the key things about a layer 2. Again, there's a bunch of layer 2s. But just because the base network is Coinbase layer 2, it does bring something pretty interesting in my opinion. Had Coinbase not been a part of it, I mean, what's so special about another layer 2? This is the way I take a look at it, right? I'm not necessarily saying I don't like the base network because I actually do. But then if, let's say, we remove the Coinbase aspect, what is so special about it? Again, Optimism helped build, the base network, right? Take a look at how well Optimism's doing. Its native governance token called OP, despite me believing in it, has not done good as of late. It's had a massive pullback, right? And we see Velodrome, which is on, Optimism, that's not doing that good. You know what I mean? The market cap is not too massive, even though I still believe in its native token called Velo. But I'm just saying, I think just having that Coinbase aspect does bring a lot more kind of recognition. And that's kind of the main thing I think about the base network. Yes, at the end of the day, it's just kind of another layer 2. But then just having that Coinbase, again, sort of aspect, that is what really I think is the cherry on top for me. And I think on the base network anyways, there isn't really that many popular projects. I mean, let's think about this, right? Of course, there's Aerodrome, which I'm talking about right now. And then there's Bread, which is a meme coin. And then there's something like Toshi, which is another meme coin. And Toshi actually, just kind of interesting enough, I want to mention this real quick. It is actually named after Brian Armstrong's pet cat. And then Brian Armstrong is the co-founder of Coinbase. So yeah, I just want to mention that. But if we think about that, that is arguably 3 pretty recognizable projects within the base network. Again, Coinbase and layer 2. And then 2 out of the 3 are meme coins. That is, I think, how kind of early the base network is. So this is why I like it, because had I entered into the base network maybe 5 years later, or should I say projects on it, because keep in mind the base network does not have its own native token, right? So it's a little bit different than some of the layer 2s out there. But I'm just saying, had I, went into these projects 5 years later, it'd be a different case. So this is why I'm staying patient right now. And again, I think that because the base network doesn't have its own native token, automatically, right, if I believe in it, there's no way for me to get its native token. So then instead, what I do is I just believe on projects on there. I am not telling you to do anything, by the way, but this is just my mentality. And also on top of that, what I like about Aerodrome is that, again, it's a decentralized exchange. The decentralized finance market is predicted to reach over $200 billion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. Now, who knows if that will ever even happen, but I think maybe that kind of shows how, yeah, sure, there's many decentralized exchanges out there right now, but I think it's kind of difficult to become that oversaturated when a market could be that massive. But who knows? Only time will tell. Now, this actually brings me to my other point, which is sometimes people asking me, hey, when is altcoin season going to happen? When is Aerodrome's native token going to see that next leg up? The exact timing, I will not be able to know that. Like, I have no control over the market. I have no control over Aerodrome. So in the next 5 months, whenever, if it ever even wants to happen, right? Let's say it decides to, it's beyond my control. But there's only one thing I can do, actually. And that is just control myself. And personally, I'm just dollar cost averaging, waiting, and that's about it. So by me just holding, if let's say there's that next leg up, hopefully, It's kind of like going along with the ride, but only time will tell. All I can do right now is again just stay patient, and that's pretty much about it. However, personally, I would still consider Aerodrome to be a sleeping giant in my perspective, which is why I'm still excited, but only time will tell. And I want to say thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.